This video is about the experimental section of the research methods topic. Psychologists are able to use different research methods. One of the most used is the experimental research method. This is how you do it. First of all, you start off with a theory. For instance, people who drink more coffee are more talkative. Now, we've done a little bit of research to get that theory, and that is that we've researched a little bit on the internet, looked at some books, and found out that coffee has caffeine, of course, and that makes the brain more receptive and may make people talk more. Now that we have our theory, our next step of research is to narrow down that theory into an aim. In psychological research, aims are usually developed from theories, such as our coffee one. However, usually they spend hours of research and time to create such aims. Aims are usually vague statements that describe the purpose of any investigation. In the case of our investigation, the aim would be something along the lines of whether coffee drinking affects how much somebody talks. Now that we've written an aim, we need to focus on our hypothesis. In the case of our investigation, the hypothesis can be something along the lines of people who drink more coffee are more talkative. A hypothesis can be directional or non-directional. A directional hypothesis usually tries to indicate what a focus group would actually do in the situation the experiment is providing. An example of a directional hypothesis in our example is that people who drink more coffee are more talkative than people who don't. A non-directional hypothesis merely states that there is a difference between two groups in an experiment. However, unlike a directional hypothesis, this isn't specified. This is usually done when research hasn't been done before, or if that research is contradictory. An example of a non-directional hypothesis is that people who drink coffee are different in relationship to people that don't. In our case, we'll use a directional hypothesis as there is clear research as to what caffeine does to the brain. However, we haven't managed to operationalize the variables in our hypothesis to make it testable. Many of the things that psychologists are interested in are usually blurry and not very easy to define. So in any study, the main point of the researcher is to make the variables as sharp and easy to measure as possible. So a much better hypothesis than any of the previous ones stated goes something along the lines of participants who drank 300 milliliters of coffee after 5 minutes were more talkative than participants that drank 300 milliliters of water. See the difference? Now that our variables have been operationalized, we can figure out more complex stuff, such as how we're actually going to count the words coming out of people's mouth during an experiment like this. Now I'm going to introduce you into the experiment. Firstly, we're going to get two sets of groups. Then starting with the first group, we'll give each participant a cup of coffee to drink. The participants in the other group will only have a glass of water. We will then record how many words each participant says immediately after they have the drink. We'll then try to implement all of those results into a graph. Obviously, this isn't a perfect experiment, however, it does illustrate how the experimental method works. In an experiment, a researcher will manipulate and change a dependent variable and see how an independent variable reacts to that change. They also have to measure this data. All other variables that may affect the dependent variable should stay constant in a properly run experiment. This is done so that the researcher knows that any change in the dependent variable is as a cause of the independent variable and only the independent variable. Thanks for watching this short video on the experimental methods section of the research topic in AQA psychology. The next one will be on control of variables.